to the show. Today we're going to do something a little bit different and just piece together a few tips and tricks. Some you may know, some may be new. I apologize in advance for boring those of you who already know everything. So let's get on with it. These magic erasers are appropriately named because for some applications they work magic. One of those is older pinball playfields. They'll get dirt from deep rubbed-in scratches that nothing else will touch. Don't rub too much as they will remove paint. I've also found that using rubbing alcohol will sometimes clean better, but you need to be ultra careful. They also perform magic on texture control panels. Here's how I clean art on the side of a cabinet. I use soap and water first, not letting it get too wet. Now I use chemicals, but use them by spraying on the rag and not on the cabinet. I start mild with 409 surface cleaner. If that's not cutting it, I go to a stronger citrus cleaner. If that's not picking up stuff, I'll try rubbing alcohol, though you have to be ultra careful as sometimes it will rub old paint right off. With all these cleaners, I try to just use the minimum of what works. Sometimes that takes 2 or 3 steps. If you're going to do some paint work, use naphtha as the last step before painting. When you're all done, if it's supposed to be a smooth glossy finish, you can use a little Novus No. 2 and a buffer and do a quick polish. This is simple, but people still struggle with it. A screw won't tighten up. I normally just whittle a strand of wood off any old board, make sure it fits a little snug, and fills up 3/4 of the hole. Put a dab of wood glue on it and shove it in the hole. I usually run the screw part way in while wet, and after an hour or so I tighten it down. You have to find the width coil. Typically it looks like this. You really need the special plastic adjustment tool. They're only a few dollars. If you stick a metal screwdriver in there, you will regret it. A lot of times this will turn hard on an old monitor, so you must have a proper fitting tool. You may be scared to do this with the power on. If so, mark the edge of the picture with a piece of tape, turn off the power, and twist the slug a few turns and turn the game back on and see if you're going the right way. It sometimes takes several turns to make much of a difference. Here are a few of my favorite websites in no particular order. Mouser.com or Jamco.com for common electronics. The Real Bob Roberts or Great Plains Electronics for more arcade-specific electronics. UseFindChips.com to help locate ICs. NTEInc.com has a decent component cross-reference. ExpressPCB to design PC boards and have them made. For game parts, there's the big players like Hap.com, where you can get supplies and newer parts. For pinball parts, I usually use Pinball Life, Bay Area Amusements, Marco Specialties, or Steve Young at the Pinball Resource. For doing research, of course, Clob.com and IPDB.org are useful sites. As always, Google is great. Just give it good search terms like Pac-Man repair logs, and you'll get more hits than you want. You need to identify 3 things before starting. 1 is the pot to adjust the voltage. 2, find a test point near the power supply to test the voltage. And 3, find a test point on the game board to test the voltage. What I would normally do before firing up a game is to unhook the game board, hook up my meter, apply power to the game, and adjust the voltage. In the case of a 5-volt line, I'd usually start at 5.1 volts. Once that's adjusted, turn off the power and plug the game in. Now check your test point on the game board. I would then adjust it to be somewhere between 5 and 5.1 volts. Sometimes you won't be able to get it above 4.9 volts. If so, it may indicate a failing regulator in the power supply, or a problem with the game itself. The point here is to get the voltages in the ballpark first, then fine-tune them when up and running. Some games will work between 4.8 and 5.5 volts, but you should typically try to get it as close to 5 volts even as possible. It's a pretty widely accepted practice now to use remote battery holders on your games. Here's how I usually build them. Online electronics houses like Mouser sell all sorts of battery holders. You can buy these for $1.50. At the same time, buy a budget package of test leads. You cut the leads in half, solder them to the holder. For most applications, you should put a diode inline on the plus lead, put the band toward the test lead clip. Slide a little shrink tubing over the bare spots and load in your batteries. Now you can simply pull out your game batteries and attach the lead to the proper terminals. I say proper as it's not really obvious where to attach them. I usually use a meter to measure voltages at various battery terminals to locate the plus and minus that reads the whole voltage for all of the batteries, which in the case of 3 AA's is around 4.7 volts. A lot of people dread doing PCB work. There is a very simple trick to not damage the PCB when swapping out an IC. You just cut out the old component first. You can use a Dremel with a cutting disc on chips or mini side cutters on other components. Then easily pull out each pin using a minimal amount of heat. Hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching.